Starmer's had this kind of very... he's got a brittle premiership anyway, because only 20% of the country actually voted for him. And so he's governing like everyone agrees with him, which they don't. And I think this comes through in his demeanor. He looks afraid. He looks like a deer in the headlights. You know, he looks like a shark that's just been confronted with an even bigger shark. And this is really hurting his favorability. Really. Now, they were never very good anyway, as you can see.
Yeah, how come he was so unfavourable, though?
Well,
like, right up until he became slightly more favourable after being elected, but
yeah, because everyone gets the honeymoon period.
But people weren't voting.
When you're in opposition, you're supposed to be, you know, it's like, oh, this guy might be great, and it's like, this guy's obviously terrible, but he's marginally less terrible than the one that we've got.
And the only reason he's in is because people were only ever voting against the Tories. They weren't voting for Labour. They got a record number of seats with lower votes than they got in 2019.
It's because Farage literally took like 30% of the Tory vote. You know, the 12 odd million who just reliably vote Tory. 4 million voted for Farage, and that just meant the Tory vote collapsed everywhere. So it's literally only a few tens of thousands in some places where it's just, you know, gets Labour over the line, never popular. And like you say, like going back to like the beginning of the year where he's at 33% favourability with 50+%, 55% don't like him. The best he can do is 45, and now he's at 37.53. And this was from a few days ago as well. So God only knows how much worse it'll get. This just to give you, if you're an American, you're like, hey, what does this mean in British politics? Well, he's less favourable than Joe Biden. People like him less than more people like Joe Biden than like Keir Starmer.
Yeah. And I've got to be honest, I was quite optimistic about Labour. I thought they'd come in to be like sort of like the Tories, but more competent, and they'd be able to control the civil service and get them to do what they wanted to do. I thought it might be slightly more sensible than the Tories, slightly more right wing than the Tories. But no, he's come in, and that first speech he gave after the riots and after the girls were killed, I thought he was going to say something to unite the nation and say, like, we acknowledge that, you know, there are these issues we need to deal with, and we're going to keep children safe, and we're going to keep everybody safe. Instead, no, he was just completely one-sided. Oh, you're all far-right bigots. We're going to protect Muslims, and it doesn't matter what's happened.
It doesn't matter how many children have to die.
Yeah.
I'll make sure not a single mosque in this country is damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I mean, he literally just came out and just declared war on the white working class. It's like, okay, that's a bold tactic, Mr. Starmer. How's that paying off for you? And as we can see, I mean, it's going to get worse than this. Right? It's going to get worse than this. This is only a couple of days. yeah, fingers crossed. But and so you know that they're looking at the stats. You know, they're looking at the riots and they're thinking, oh my God, we're bureaucrats. We're not prepared for this kind of madness, right? And so I think it really comes down to the fact that he doesn't actually understand what it is to be a human being, right?
That's quite strong, but I agree, yeah.
I mean,
it's completely true.
He looks like he's made out of tin.
Do you see a soul behind his eyes?
Yeah.
I don't.
Again, like a shark. You know, there's no soul in there. It's just beady eyes and a mouthful of sharp teeth.
You sound like Werner Herzog describing looking into the face of a bear. It's like he sees nothing but a slight interest in food.
Looking into the face of a bureaucrat.
I don't think comparing him with a shark is giving him way too much credit.
Exactly, but he sees nothing but the opportunity to legislate further.
Yeah, this is like, you know, some Kafka-esque, or like the Gulag Archipelago guy. I can't pronounce his name, but you know, when he describes the bureaucrats and the apparatchiks who decide on your fate.
That's Starmer.
Yeah,
that's what's in charge of the country at the moment, with a massive. Well, not a massive mandate, but with the ability to do anything that he wants. And the reason I've pulled this one up is because he literally doesn't understand why people are upset. He doesn't understand why they're rioting, right? As Max here points out, look, the journalists are giving him an off-ramp, like Dan was pointing out. So look, the journalists are like, do you want to tell the working class that, yeah, they have understandable concerns about their children being slaughtered when they're at a dance class by a second-generation immigrant or anything like that? And Keir Starmer's like, what, those fucking racists?
He's like, I've not been programmed to care about other people's children.
Yeah, well, not the children of the English anyway, you know. I mean, trust me, there's not going to be a single bloody foreign child, but...
If we have indeed turned a corner and seen an end to the violence, is now the time to engage with the underlying tensions that are in communities over the issue of immigration?
The first priority is safety and security of our communities. And
including kids?
Yes, last night was much better than was expected, but we are not going to give up on our efforts here. That's why it's very important that I continue my discussions, coordinating with law enforcement, with police leaders, to make sure we've got the right officers in the right place, to keep pushing on.
No. I'm not going to address any of their concerns whatsoever. What I'm going to do is bring my stormtroopers forward and make sure they're fully in place to crack skulls. Like it's
Stormtroopers.
What else are you going to call them? It's literally inhuman. He doesn't understand. There isn't a soul inside of his chest. It's just mad.
I've started calling him Sharia Kier after his defense of Islam.
There are loads of great names for him. There are loads, but I do like two-tier Kier.
When his previous wasn't he a human rights lawyer before he was a prosecutor
For criminals,
and and like him and Sadiq Khan have got an interesting choice of clients. It's, a cynic. Well, obviously everybody deserves representation, but it is interesting when somebody picks
continually.
Yeah,
Like 9/11 attackers. Or,
yeah.
It's just like weird.
It's almost as if that person might, want to destroy the West or something. I'm not saying that's the underlying aim of wokeism and critical race theory or anything, but they do say it is.
All I'm saying is that when 3 English kids got stabbed, he was like, how much money can I give the mosques?
Yeah.
It was weird. But again, he doesn't understand that he comes across as like an inhuman machine man.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I've made my decision. The English are going to the meat grinder, and I'm going to give tummy rubs to the other communities who've got nothing to do with this, you would think, right?
Tommy Robinson.
That's what I've heard there.
I wasn't thinking about that at all, okay?
That'd be a good kid's character.
So YouGov did some snap polling on this, which I think was interesting. And two-thirds of Britons were like, not in favor of this. They're thugs, they're rioters, they're racist, they're far right. So the Radio Rwanda work is all going quite well. Only 9% said they're patriotic. 7% they said they were far left. Like that's the real far right of the country. 7% of all those fucking leftists rioting in Southport.
Who's saying that?
I don't know. But 16% said people with legitimate concerns, blah, 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 right? So it's people are not in favor of what's happening in Southport, right? People aren't like, something terrible happens, maybe you should go smash the place.
I think it's important to remember the selective bias of YouGov and the fact that they do selectively send out their polls to people who answer in a particular way.
Well, you say that, but this was actually really, really interesting, right? 1 in 3 Britons support the recent protests. They're like, only 1 in 3. So 1 in 3, that's 20 million people.
Yeah.
Well, like, I'm kind of in favor of those riots, actually. It's like, that's massive, isn't it? Like, that's absolutely huge. But about half the country oppose, so about 30% in favor. But I mean, I would say that's enormous, but yeah. Okay. But the interesting thing is, again, who thinks it's justified? Again, about a third of the country are just like, it's kind of justified that they go and attack a bunch of mosques. It's like,
that's nearing half.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are like, I don't know if it's justified or not, bro. Like, that's a large constituency, right? Like, so if you're in the Starmer bunker and you're getting these numbers soon, they're like, at least the British public are with us. They're not in favor of rioting. Well, I mean, about 42% of them actually do think it's kind of justified, actually. It's like, okay, it's the protests themselves, yes, but the riots, no.
And this next one is interesting. 6 in 10 Britons have sympathies with the peaceful protests. That kind of contradicts. It's like twice as many as in the previous thing. I don't know what the difference is between the two.
It'll be the way they've asked the question.
It's the protests versus the riots, right?
Right.
So people are like, we totally agree with the underlying sentiment.
Yeah.
60% are like, the recent protests, we'll get onto what the public think are behind the protests. Actually, it all maps up quite nicely to the number of people who just don't want immigration, which is about 60% of the country.
Right.
And
you think in a democracy, 60% of the country would be.
you would think. I think a good definition of democracy is when people get what they vote for. Right. That's what I think democracy is. So if you're in California and you keep voting Democrat, and someone, a drug addict, stabs you in front of a car, breaks in, steals stuff, that's democracy. You voted for it, you got it. Right. No, that's totally Seth Rogen.
Ask Seth Rogen.
Exactly. He voted for it. He got it. They have an authentic democracy in California or in Portland or in New York where they keep voting left. Now, in Britain, We're a really far right country, as you can see by this polling. Where 60% of people are we're a far right country, and we keep getting far leftism. So we are not a democracy. We do not get what we vote for.
And instead of listening to the people, the government instead tries to make it illegal to have those opinions.
Yes, 20% of the population are allowed to tyrannize the rest of the population with Keir Starmer.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.